Lena Morales stood at the head of the long mahogany conference table, her heart pounding beneath the crisp white blouse she had chosen to project confidence. Around her, the faces of the R&D board blinked in the harsh glare of recessed ceiling lights, seasoned executives in tailored suits, their arms folded or pens tapping on leather-bound notebooks. On the wall behind her, a projector cast her full-scale schematic. A sleek, 8-rotor electric VTOL vehicle, its slender fuselage and folding wings promising silent urban flight with zero emissions. She cleared her throat and began her pitch, voice steady despite the storm of nerves beneath. This wasn't a fanciful sketch, she insisted, but a technically rigorous design built on advances in high-energy density batteries and regenerative aerodynamics. She walked them through the modular powertrain, the distributed electric propulsion pods, the fail-safe redundant control algorithms she had coded herself. Each slide layered new data, specific energy calculations, weight-to-thrust ratios, projected operating costs compared to helicopters and ground taxis. As she spoke, she caught the faint upward curl of a senior executive's lip, the skeptical arch of an engineer's brow, and the polite distraction of an investor leafing through last quarter's financials. When she concluded, she stood perfectly still, arms at her sides, shoulders squared, willing them to see the future she had labored to draw. Silence stretched. Then the lead executive, a man whose reputation for pragmatism was legendary, leaned forward, fingers steepled. "Lena," he said, voice measured, "your passion is admirable. But electric VTOL? The battery technology simply isn't there. The certification hurdles, the infrastructure investment, it would require a complete industry overhaul." He glanced around the table, his meaning unspoken but clear. "This is a bridge too far." Another board member nodded. "We already have too many competing projects. Our capital can't chase every moonshot." A third pointed out that urban regulators would balk at rooftops full of whirring aircraft. Within moments, the tone shifted from polite concern to thinly veiled dismissal. Lena watched her carefully crafted argument collapse under the weight of established thinking and quarterly profit forecasts. When it was over, she gathered her materials and walked out into the corridor, her schematic printouts rolled tight under her arm. The echo of her heels on marble seemed deafening. In the boardroom's glass-walled interior, the executives resumed their discussion, voices rising over details of existing projects, autopilot updates, incremental engine tweaks, none of them daring to glance back at the empty chair Lena had so recently occupied. Outside, Lena inhaled deeply, the city's late-afternoon traffic noise filtering through the glass doors. She felt the sting of rejection settle in her chest like cold lead, but beneath it, a quiet ember glowed. They had told her idea would never fly, but she knew that real innovation often began precisely where comfort zones ended. Clutching her blueprints, she steeled herself for the next step, finding a place where her vision could breathe, where she could prove that the future of flight belonged not to those who looked back, but to those brave enough to look up. Before dawn the next morning, Lena slipped into Hangar Bay B, an unused corner of the company's sprawling maintenance facility, armed with little more than her passion and a duffel bag stuffed with salvaged drone motors, power electronics scavenged. From decommissioned prototypes and a stack of battery cells donated by an old college classmate. The hangar's yawning doors were half closed, and the low hum of idle generators filled the cavernous space with a sleepy drone. Lena flipped on her flashlight and navigated past rows of grounded helicopters and shelved fuselage sections until she reached the farthest wall. With trembling hands, she pried aside a loose panel to reveal a narrow crawl space that led into the skunk works she had carved out of obscurity. Inside, the air smelled of oil and old metal. She flicked on a single shop light to reveal a makeshift workshop. Plywood benches bolted to cinder blocks, a rolling toolbox crammed with wrenches and soldering irons, and a whiteboard scrawled with scribbles of aerodynamic coefficients and control system flowcharts. On the floor lay the skeleton of her first prototype, a skeletal fuselage frame fashioned from carbon fiber rods and aluminum struts, its 8 motor mounts empty, awaiting their propulsive hearts. Over the next week, Lena recruited a handful of engineers who shared her conviction. Alejandro, a propulsion specialist laid off in the last round of cuts. Priya, a software engineer itching to code flight control algorithms rather than server backends, and Marcus, an electrical technician with a knack for coaxing more power from tired battery cells. Each evening after their official shifts, they filed into the hidden hangar bay, traded quick smiles, and dove into work. Their progress was measured in failures as much as successes. On the first night, Alejandro's drone motors spun unevenly, ribbons of sparks flying from overheated windings. Priya's initial attempt to balance the flight control loop resulted in a jittery servo dance that threatened to tear the prototype apart. Marcus spent hours rewiring the power bus to eliminate voltage sags that had crippled their first motor tests. Each setback elicited groans and expletives, but also fierce determination and a growing camaraderie born of shared sacrifices. To power extended tests, they rigged up a mobile charging station, batteries from Lena's duffel wired into a bank of jump-starter packs, ganged together beneath a tarp. They scoured local electronics recyclers for inertial sensors and wiring harnesses, and negotiated with a sympathetic forklift operator to borrow lifting straps when the prototype frame needed repositioning. Beneath the flickering fluorescent lamp, sketches of ducted versus open propeller configurations covered the whiteboard, interspersed with coffee-stained equations for thrust-to-weight ratios. As days blurred into nights, the team's rituals took shape. At precisely 7 p.m., they assembled for the evening stand-up. Progress updates, hurdles encountered, and goals for the next 4 hours. By 10:00 p.m., they paused for sandwiches Lena ordered from a nearby diner, greasy fuel for minds and bodies running on adrenaline. And at 1 a.m., when the hangar's security cameras cycled blind, they conducted hush-quiet motor spin tests and first hover attempts using a handheld radio link to Priya's laptop. 2 weeks in, the prototype, still a work in progress, was ready for its first powered test. Under the cover of darkness, Lena and Alejandro strapped into safety harnesses, while Marcus and Priya operated throttles from a distance of 20 feet. The motors whined to life, and for a fleeting 3 seconds, the skeletal fuselage trembled off the ground, hovering at ankle height before the batteries died, and it settled with a soft thud. The team erupted in cheers that echoed off steel beams, their exhilaration tempered only by the knowledge that this fragile victory was just the beginning. As dawn approached, and they returned the prototype to its concealed nook, Lena surveyed her team. Sleep-deprived, hands stained with grease, faces alight with the glow of possibility. In that hidden hangar bay, beneath layers of corporate indifference, they had begun to build the world's first electric VTOL air taxi. And as she locked the panel behind her, Lena carried with her the certainty that even the most outlandish dreams could take flight when the right people dared to believe. As the clock edged past midnight, the hidden hangar bay fell into an expectant hush. Lena Morales, Alejandro, Priya, and Marcus gathered around the prototype VTOL, its carbon fiber frame cradled in custom-built jigs and its 8 electric rotor pods freshly mounted. Overhead, a single incandescent bulb cast long, dancing shadows across the concrete floor. Lena's chest tightened with a mix of exhilaration and dread. Tonight would be the first time their creation left its cradle. They ran through the pre-flight checklist in whispered unison. Alejandro checked motor mount torques with a digital wrench. Priya booted her laptop and established a secure telemetry link. Marcus verified every battery connection and confirmed each cell's voltage with his multimeter. Lena moved methodically through the flight control parameters. Hover throttle set to 60%, altitude hold engaged at 2 meters, emergency cutoff programmed at 3 seconds of sustained overcurrent. Each confirmation was met with a silent nod, a contract of mutual trust. With the corridor doors sealed and the hangar's motion sensors temporarily disabled, Lena signaled the brief, "All clear." Marcus keyed the master switch, and the 8 motors hummed to life in unison, a low, resonant purr that filled the bay. Priya's voice crackled in Lena's earpiece. "Telemetry green, all systems nominal." Alejandro and Marcus backed away to safe positions, while Lena gripped the remote control with steady hands. She advanced the throttle keeper until the force on the frame gently lifted the prototype a few centimeters above its supports. Lena exhaled a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. "We're airborne," she whispered, her voice echoing in the empty hangar. Priya's cursor darted across the screen, tracing pitch, roll, and yaw values. Alejandro gave a subtle thumbs up. The prototype hovered with surprising stability. Emboldened, Lena nudged the controls forward. The VTOL responded, drifting down the length of the hangar at a deliberate half-meter per second. Overhead, steel beams blurred in motion, and Priya's voice reflected her awe. "You've got forward thrust. Thrust vector is stable." Lena allowed herself a flicker of triumph. Then, as she increased throttle to test lateral maneuvering, a sudden spike in motor current jolted all 4 of them into sharp alert. One of the rear rotor pods shuddered violently, its motor housing glowing faintly orange from the intense friction. Alarm bells chimed in Lena's headset. "Overcurrent, motor 4. She slammed the emergency cutoff. The prototype lunged sideward before slumping onto one wingtip with a resounding metallic clang. For a breathless moment, there was only stunned silence. Sparks glittered where the pod's winding had burned insulation, and a thin wisp of smoke curled toward the rafters. Lena's heart pounded so loudly, she feared she'd miss any critical warning. Then Alejandro rushed in with a fire extinguisher, dousing the smoldering motor until the haze cleared. Priya hurried to save the telemetry logs, and Marcus knelt to inspect the damage, his face pale in the emergency light. "I'm sorry," Lena's voice trembled as she approached the wreck. I thought the thermal modules would handle the load." She gingerly touched the charred motor housing. It crumbled under her gloved fingertip, revealing a brittle fracture in the winding assembly. Priya's laptop beeped insistently. "Data captured, downlink complete." She held the screen for Lena, a time-stamped log showing exactly when and why Motor 4 had overheated. As silence settled over the hangar, Marcus spoke first, voice quiet but firm. "This is salvageable. That thermal insight you got from the nighttime calibration tests, apply it here. We can reroute coolant lines around the winding and add a secondary heat sink." Alejandro nodded, already sketching redesign notes on a scrap of cardboard. Priya backed up the flight logs and began annotating them. Peak currents, temperature spikes, rotor RPMs. Lena sank to the concrete floor beside the crippled prototype, mind racing through the failure's implications. Hours of work, a critical test aborted, the risk of discovery higher than ever. Yet as she stared at the telemetry printout, so brutally precise in its failure analysis, a spark of hope ignited. This crash had done more than damage a motor. It had delivered data no simulation could replicate. She raised her gaze to her team, faces illuminated by the glow of the laptop. "We're not done," she declared, voice stronger now. "We have exactly what we need to fix this. Tomorrow at dawn, we rebuild." The team rallied around her, each placing a hand on the prototype's frame, solidarity born of shared failure and mutual resolve. And as they extinguished the last of the heat-scented smoke, the hidden hangar bay pulsed with renewed purpose. Their first flight had ended in a fiery crash, but in those final frantic seconds of telemetry, Lena's vision had taken its most important step toward reality. Before first light the following morning, Lena's team reconvened in the hidden hangar bay, the charcoal sky outside barely brighter than the hangar's darkened interior. Their faces, illuminated by a single work lamp, bore the marks of exhaustion and determination. On the plywood table lay the charred motor housing from the previous night's crash, its coils blackened and brittle. Next to it, a stack of new rotor pods, each redesigned with integrated micro heat sinks and custom coolant channels, awaited assembly. Lena took a deep breath and addressed her team. Last night gave us the data we needed. Tonight we build the future. She tapped the telemetry printout, a dense log of overcurrent spikes and temperature curves. Our failure threshold was clear. Let's keep the motor temperature below 80 degrees Celsius under full load. Over the next hour, Alejandro and Marcus worked side by side, disassembling the damaged pod and drilling precision channels for liquid cooling tubing around the motor stator. They threaded a network of fine copper pipes through foam-insulated channels, soldering joints with practiced hands and testing each seal with a low-pressure air burst. Priya crouched at Lena's laptop, updating the flight control software to include real-time thermal feedback. If any pod's temperature approached 75 degrees, thrust would automatically scale back by 10% to allow cooling. Meanwhile, Lena oversaw the installation of a lightweight radiative heat sink, a matrix of anodized aluminum fins, around the motor assembly. She calculated fin surface area to maximize convective heat transfer in low airflow conditions and secured the assembly with aerospace-grade epoxy. The prototype's frame groaned under the weight of these additions, but she reinforced key struts with carbon fiber braces salvaged from a damaged drone fuselage. As the clock ticked toward dawn, the assembled rotor pods gleamed under the lamp's stark light, sleek, complex, and designed for resilience. The team paused for cold coffee and protein bars, reviewing the new pre-flight checklist aloud. Lena tested each thermal sensor, confirming accurate readings via handheld infrared scope. "Everything's green," she announced. "Let's fly." They wheeled the prototype onto the runway's edge, the hangar doors sliding open to reveal the pale promise of sunrise. The horizon glowed a soft apricot, and the air felt crisp against their skin. Lena climbed into the remote control station while Alejandro and Marcus backed off to safe zones. Priya's laptop hummed, displaying live telemetry channels, temperature, thrust, battery current, flight control inputs. When Lena keyed the motors, the sound was different. A smooth, confident whir that rose cleanly without sputter or hesitation. The prototype lifted gently, clearing the ground by 20 centimeters. Lena nudged it forward, and it drifted down the runway at half-meter-per-second increments, its frame steady against the morning breeze. She nudged it higher, 1 meter then 2, witnessing the graceful transition to hover. The critical test came when she advanced throttle to 80%. The motors sang with power, and the fuselage rose another meter, hovers steadily as the horizon brightened behind distant hills. On her headset, Priya's voice conveyed measured excitement. "Thermals are steady, 60 degrees Celsius max, no overcurrent. Flameout thresholds look safe." Lena tested lateral translation, yaw control, and forward acceleration. Each maneuver was smooth, responsive, precise. The refined thermal modules and control algorithms had tamed the prototype's instability. She executed a gentle transition to forward flight, slight nose-down input, and the VTOL glided down the runway, the rotors tilting seamlessly to push air rearward. The team watched from the sidelines as the silhouette arced against the dawn sky, then returned to hover with millimeter accuracy. When the prototype settled back onto the runway, the hangar crew erupted in cheers. Marcus clapped Alejandro on the back. Priya high-fived Lena through the remote station's microphone. Lena allowed herself a triumphant grin, relief and pride mingling in her chest. In the soft glow of dawn, their second prototype had not only flown, but excelled, validating every sleepless hour and every sacrifice made in that hidden hangar bay. As they wheeled the VTOL back into its skunkworks den, Lena paused to capture a final data snapshot, a clean log marked Test 2, thermal stabilization confirmed. She plugged the cap into the flight computer and whispered, "We've done it." In that luminous moment, against the rising sun, Lena knew that this breakthrough would change everything, turning her idea from never fly to transform the skies at last. At sunrise's edge, Lena Morales stepped into SkySprint's newly christened prototyping. Hangar, a repurposed maintenance bay now humming with activity. Gone were the shadows of secrecy. In their place stood gleaming workstations, tool carts brimming with calibrated torque wrenches, and rows of freshly manufactured rotor pods awaiting integration. A large whiteboard dominated one wall, its surface crowded with launch timelines, certification checklists, and market entry roadmaps. Under bright LED fixtures, Lena surveyed her team of 12 engineers, technicians, and pilots, each face alight with anticipation. Today marked the culmination of 2 years' relentless effort. Pitch and partner funding secured, second-generation prototypes perfected, and regulatory sandbox approval for commercial demonstration flights. In the center of the hangar, on a raised steel platform, rested the SkySprint SS-1 MKII, an elegant, carbon composite VTOL air taxi with folding wings and 8 counter-rotating ducted rotors. Its fuselage bore the SkySprint logo and the words Silent Air Mobility in crisp turquoise lettering. Lena crossed to the MKII's cockpit, where her lead test pilot, Captain Simone DuPont, ran through a final pre-flight checklist. Instruments glowed on the digital console. Battery charge at 100%, thermal sensors green, autopilot and navigation systems synced to the vertiport's HD radar grid. Lena traced a finger along the aircraft's smooth flank, recalling the countless nights spent refining each panel curvature to maximize aerodynamic efficiency. "Throttle ramp?" Lena asked. DuPont's gloved hand flicked a switch. 5-second ramp to full hover, she confirmed. The two women exchanged a nod, their shared confidence punctuating years of triumphs and setbacks. Behind them, ground engineers secured tethers and safety harnesses, while SkySprint's head of operations, Marcus Lee, briefed the media crew assembled at a cordoned-off perimeter. Cameras whirred as reporters leaned forward, pens poised, capturing every word for the world's business and technology channels. At Lena's signal, DuPont strapped into the cockpit and closed the canopy with a decisive hiss. Lena pressed a final command on her tablet, initiating the MKII's power sequence. A low hum pulsed through the hangar as the electric motors spun up, each rotor pod achieving precise RPM in mere seconds. DuPont's voice crackled over the intercom. "All systems nominal. Ready for lift." With a gentle upward motion on the collective joystick, the MKII lifted gracefully from its platform. Its ducted fans whisper quiet, even at full thrust. Reporters gasped. SkySprint engineers exchanged triumphant looks. Lena felt the familiar rush of accomplishment, but she remained vigilant, knowing the demonstration's stakes extended far beyond a successful hover. DuPont transitioned the MKII into forward flight, folding the wings out and tilting the rotors adaptively to generate horizontal lift. The aircraft slid down the runway corridor, then banked smoothly in a controlled 90-degree turn toward the vertiport exit. Two morning sky brushed in pale gold as the MKII crossed the hangar threshold and hovered over the adjacent rooftop vertiport, an elevated landing pad outfitted with solar-powered charging stations and passenger boarding gates. Lena joined Marcus and DuPont at the vertiport's edge, watching as the MKII descended to a precise landing. DuPont lifted the canopy and emerged, offering a thumbs up that Lena returned with a broad smile. A small group of invited passengers, tech journalists, city planners, and a few early adopter customers applauded as DuPont guided them up the boarding stairs. Inside the MKII's cabin, Lena witnessed the culmination of her vision. 4 seats arranged around a panoramic window, soft ambient lighting, and plush, sustainable upholstery. The passengers settled in with a mixture of awe and curiosity as DuPont initiated the return flight. Lena's tablet displayed real-time metrics, energy use efficiency at 25 kilowatt-hours per 100 kilometers, noise profile below 65 decibels at 5 meters, benchmarks that crushed urban aircraft regulations and set new industry standards. Moments later, the MKII lifted again, carrying its human cargo back to the main runway. Lena felt tears well as she read back the vertiport's air traffic display, showing the MKII's graceful arc against the city skyline. Reporters shivered with excitement, their cameras capturing the first commercial-style flight of an electric air taxi that 2 years earlier they'd been told would never fly. As the SS-1 MKII touched down at the primary vertiport, Lena descended the stairs to a hero's welcome. SkySprint employees cheered, journalists jostled for interviews, and city officials pressed her hand with promises of rooftop vertiport networks stretching across every major metropolis. In the golden morning light, Lena realized that this flight was more than a technical milestone. It was the spark that would ignite the transformation of urban mobility worldwide. And at that moment, the impossible blueprint she had once sketched on a conference room screen took flight as a living testament to perseverance, innovation, and the power of belief. As the first light of dawn crept through the floor-to-ceiling, windows of Horizon Ventures' sleek downtown office tower, Lena Morales sat alone in the polished wood boardroom, her slip of paper sweat-damp in her hand. SkySprint series a pitch, 8:00 a.m. All around her, city traffic hummed like distant bees, oblivious to the storm of possibility about to break inside this room. At precisely 8, a cadre of venture partners, 6 in all, their faces a spectrum of curiosity and corporate detachment, filed in and took their seats. They represented over $500 million in aerospace and mobility funds. Lena rose and projected her opening slide onto the frosted glass wall. The SkySprint SS-1 MKII, hovering effortlessly above a cityscape at sunrise. She let the image breathe for a moment, watching as eyes flickered and pens tapped. "Good morning," she began, voice steady. "I'm Lena Morales, founder and CEO of SkySprint. 2 years ago, this concept was dismissed as fantasy. Today, it's a validated, commercially ready electric VTOL platform poised to redefine urban transport." With a click, she advanced to a cost comparison chart. SkySprint's operating cost at 25 cents per passenger kilometer, less than half that of ground taxis, ticket prices estimated at $50 per ride, undercutting helicopter shuttles by 60%. She paced slowly before the partners, each step deliberate. Our Alpha prototype flew 8 weeks ago, achieving a 5-minute vertiport-to-airport link at 80 kilometers per hour. Noise levels measured below 65 decibels, silent enough to land next to hospitals and schools without complaint. A hush fell as she played a brief video, the MKII lifting off, banking and touching down with the softest whisper of wind. Next came market analysis. 10 global cities with rooftop vertiport demand exceeding 2 million commuters daily. Regulatory frameworks in early pilot phases, partnerships already secured with 3 municipal governments. Lena's tone shifted, pragmatic yet passionate. "We're not asking to reinvent mobility. We're offering a scalable solution to gridlock, pollution, and time wasted in transit." Then she delivered the ask. "We seek a $50 million Series A to fund production tooling, vertiport network build-out pilot in City X, and certification with aviation authorities. In return, we project a $1 billion valuation within 5 years, driven by franchise vertiports, rideshare integration, and subscription models." Silence gripped the room. The lead partner, a taciturn figure with silver hair, leaned back, steepled his fingers, and studied Lena's calm face. "Ms. Morales," he said, voice low, "this is bold, but capital efficiency and regulatory risk are non-trivial. Why should we believe this won't stall like so many aerospace ventures?" Lena met his gaze without flinch. "Because we've de-risked every stage. Our second prototype flew under extreme temperature and payload tests. We have binding MOUs with battery suppliers guaranteeing production capacity. And our advisory board includes ex-FAA certification leads." She tapped a slide listing credentials. Years of flight hours, test certifications passed, contingency budgets reserved. A third partner interjected, "And your team? Operations and maintenance are critical." Lena smiled and introduced her core leadership team, each stepping forward. a former NASA flight systems engineer, a logistics executive from a major airline, and a vertiport infrastructure director. She recounted their track record, over 500 combined years in aerospace, logistics, and urban planning. As questions turned to logistics and timeline specifics, Lena responded with detailed Gantt charts, supply chain maps, and risk mitigation matrices. She articulated fallback strategies, modular battery swaps, redundant control system protocols, and scalable vertiport designs that could retrofit existing helipads. After a solid 2 hours, Lena clicked to her final slide, a live data feed from SkySprint's vertiport simulator showing real-time passenger boarding sequences and charging cycles. "This," she said, voice rich with conviction, "is where urban transport takes flight." The partners sat in contemplative silence, then began exchanging whispered looks. The lead partner cleared his throat. "We'll offer $60 million subject to due diligence, a 20% premium on your ask in exchange for board majority and phased milestone releases." Lena inhaled, heart pounding, then extended her hand. "We accept." As hands shook and smiles broke across stony faces, Lena felt the years of hidden hangar sessions, prototype crashes, and solitary nights coalesce into this moment of triumph. The impossible blueprint had soared through the most daunting pitch the industry could muster, and at that table, SkySprint's future shifted from fantasy to funded reality. As dawn's first light crept across the city skyline, Lena Morales stood atop the gleaming rooftop vertiport of Metro Central Tower, the wind tugging gently at her tailored SkySprint jacket. Below her, the SS-1 Commercial Elite hovered silently, its turquoise livery reflecting the pastel hues of morning. Commuters gathered behind the glass safety barriers, smartphones raised, their faces alight with wonder and anticipation. City officials, regulators, and media crews filled a cordoned-off press gallery, ready to witness the world's first fully electric, commercially certified air taxi in service. Lena checked her watch. 6:58 a.m., 2 minutes until liftoff. She exchanged a glance with Captain Simone DuPont, who sat confidently in the cockpit, headset on, digital checklist complete. Lena's heart raced, not with fear, but with the exhilarating knowledge that every calculation, every turbulent crash, and every sleepless night had led to this historic moment. She stepped to the microphone installed at the vertiport's edge and tapped it gently. "Ladies and gentlemen, today we usher in a new era of urban transportation," her voice echoed across the deck. "Silent, emissions-free, and safe. SkySprint's air taxis will reimagine your commute, cutting travel times, decongesting streets, and preserving our environment." Applause rippled through the crowd as Lena nodded toward Captain DuPont. At precisely 7 a.m., Captain DuPont advanced the collective throttle. The 8 ducted rotors spun up in perfect harmony, their combined thrust lifting the SS-1 with graceful authority. Cameras whirred, and the assembled crowd fell silent as the aircraft ascended to 10 meters, then aligned itself for its inaugural route to East Side Airport, normally a 45-minute drive through gridlocked streets. Below, traffic paused. Commuters stepped from sidewalks to watch the silent air taxi drift across the morning sky, its white form a sleek silhouette against the rising sun. Lena counted down the seconds. 2 minutes to vertiport departure, 3 minutes to cruising altitude. She monitored live telemetry on her tablet, energy consumption tracking precisely with predictions, thermal sensors rock steady, autopilot maintaining a perfect glide path. As the SS-1 reached its cruising altitude of 50 meters, Captain DuPont engaged the forward flight protocol. The rotors tilted seamlessly, and the aircraft accelerated to 80 kilometers per hour, leaving the city's sprawl gleaming beneath its wings. Lena exhaled as she watched the real-time map feed, the SS-1's trajectory slicing an arc over the river, past downtown skyscrapers, and out toward the airport. 7 minutes later, the air taxi approached East Side Airport's vertiport, an elevated platform integrated into the parking structure. Pedestrians on the ground tracked its descent, the SS-1 settling onto its landing pads with millimeter precision. The rotors wound down in a soft, descending hum, drawing appreciative murmurs from bystanders. Back at Metro Central, Lena joined a cheering crowd as the two-way video feed confirmed a flawless round trip. City officials pressed her hand, congratulating her on a reliable, scalable solution that would soon expand to multiple routes. Reporters peppered her with questions about fleet rollout timing, pricing models, and environmental impact. Lena answered each with poised enthusiasm, mindful that this demonstration had opened the floodgates to global adoption. By midday, the first paying passengers, business leaders, and early adopter subscribers boarded subsequent flights, their flights booked via the SkySprint app in seconds. Lena watched a businessman in a sharp suit step off the SS-1 at Metro Central 5 minutes later, beaming as he strode to his office elevator. She met his eye and offered a nod. Welcome to the future of urban mobility. As the sun dipped toward afternoon, sky taxis streaked silently across the city like fireflies on programmed routes. Traffic cameras reported a measurable decrease in ground vehicle congestion along major arteries. Environmental monitors recorded a drop in local NOx levels. SkySprint's vertiport network, all 4 initial sites, handled continuous arrivals and departures without noise complaints. That evening, Lena returned to the Metro Central vertiport to watch the SS-1's final landing of the day. The city lights glittered below, and the horizon glowed in fading amber. She pressed a hand to the aircraft's fuselage, feeling the subtle vibration of life beneath her palm. 2 years ago, they'd called her idea impossible. Tonight, the skies themselves had been transformed. As the rotors wound down for the last time, Lena smiled at the skyline of silent electric air taxis poised like guardians above the urban grid. In that fleeting moment, she knew SkySprint had not only realized her vision, but unlocked a new chapter in human mobility, one where innovation, audacity, and resilience would continue to lift the world to uncharted heights.